for attending the Startup Week Female Funders and Founders panel. My name is Felina Hansen. We had about 150 people registered for this event, but apparently this is Canada for some people. All the way up in North County, as some people call it, which I don't consider it North County. From a show of hands, how many of you live north of downtown San Diego? Okay, so having an event not in downtown, did anybody appreciate that?
Yes.
All right, we have a few people. All right, perfect. Well, Hera Hub, we're excited to host this event. We were excited to be asked with Evo Nexus to host this event. And the very esteemed Athena, and I'm going to bug Sarah to stand up with me here and tell you a little bit about Athena. How many of you have heard of Athena prior to this event? Okay, so we have a great opportunity to educate some other folks on this. I'm going to step aside and let you talk a little bit about Athena.
So Athena San Diego, we are a membership organization for female executives in science and tech companies. So we do one-on-one mentoring programs, peer-to-peer mentoring, and just amazing panel discussions and networking events to really just help women connect and advance in their careers. So if anyone is interested in membership or just coming to our events, maybe you don't qualify as a member, we put on just great events for purposeful networking for our women and men. So please join us.
Awesome. Thank you. Round of applause for Sarah. That was a weak round of applause. Awesome. Well, we are going to have a really fun dialogue this evening. I'm going to start off with just a very brief who's who up here, and then we're going to go to just about a 1 to 2 minute introduction so you can go a little deeper with each of our panelists. And then I have some fun questions that I'm going to be asking. And I even did a Facebook post about a week and a half ago and asked local women in the community and men to tell me what they would want to ask the panel if they were not able to be here. So we have a solid hour for the panel, and then we'll have some time for Q&A, a little more networking. We can go all night. We'll put the music back on. I have plenty of beer. Thank goodness some guys came tonight. If you're a woman who drinks beer, I need you to drink at least one beer before you leave. I have a lot of beer. I was thinking more men would come this evening. Why aren't there more men here? Smart guys, come on. Yeah. Awesome. Exactly. How many of you have never heard of Hera Hub? Raise your hand. All right, awesome. All right, now you have, right?
Beautiful.
Well, thank you. I'll round out the conversation a little later with what the heck this is, but we'll dive into our conversation here first. So I'm going to introduce our panelists. I'll start with Dina Moskowitz, all the way on the end there. Her company is SaaSmax. She's the CEO, and SaaSmax is the enterprise SaaS and cloud app marketplace platform and concierge service focused on accelerating your business by proactively matching qualified SaaS vendors with established resellers and interested buyers, and by providing, you had a copywriter write this, didn't you? By providing product awareness, product education, and reseller program expertise and process to the business cloud software ecosystem. That was one sentence. That was incredible. That was the best sentence.
But for those of you who fell asleep, it's basically like the match.com between business cloud software and resellers.
Much better said. I love it. Really. Awesome. Wonderful. All right. Miss Kim Folsom is CEO of Fund Athena, which I'm really excited to talk about this evening. Fund Athena is the world's first SEC registered, regulated is the word I'm looking for. Reg A marketplace. Reg A, I like that, Reg A, marketplace for Main Street investors to invest growth funds in businesses run by gender diverse management teams. Got that? Good stuff, awesome. We'll come down to Samantha Urban, CEO of Urban Translations. Urban Translations brings the hospitality industry into a new era of efficiency, customer service, and profitability. Cool stuff. And then we have Miss Elizabeth Wilson, managing partner of Seed GC, General Counsel, right? GC, General Counsel. Seed GC provides strategic legal counsel to entrepreneurs, startups, and investors. And last but not least, my partner in crime, dun dun dun, Miss Sylvia Ma, PhD, thank you very much, founder of Hera Labs and Hera Fund. Hera Labs is San Diego's first and only female-focused accelerator, and Hera Fund organizes events and education to inspire more women to become angel investors. Do we need that?
Yes.
Amen? All right, perfect, awesome. So without further ado, Sylvia, I'm gonna start with you and go backwards just a minute or so. Dive a little deeper, just highlights of who you are before we jump into the questions.
So I'm pretty loud, so I think that we're
She's
good.
a Latina.
Yeah, I'm Latina. I don't look like it, but I am. I'm from Venezuela, originally here in San Diego about 16 years. I am an angel investor. I only fund female entrepreneurs, period. It's very simple. I think a gender lens is where to go. And I am Felina's angel investor here at Hera Hub. I loved her. I love the concept. I funded her. Pretty easy. That's kind of like the equation that angels do. I also run Hera Labs, which is a business accelerator. I'm coming from a tech accelerator background. I worked at UCSC in engineering. I taught engineering. I taught social entrepreneurship. I have a PhD in biochemistry. I don't even use it anytime. But still, it's something that I love, really looking at any startup from a tech background and from a tech startup methodology, lean startup, all that good stuff. Love it, breathe it, and help startups get funded, basically.
Perfect, brilliant.
I have 3 kids, love them. I'm a working mom. It's all good.
Right.
Yeah, I love on and on about that too.
We'll get into it a lot more. I love it.
Yeah,
Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth Wilson. I'm a corporate transactional attorney. I've been practicing for almost a decade now. And I spent most of my law career at a big firm, Gunderson Detmer, that does almost exclusively startup emerging growth company work. So I've got a lot of background representing companies that are looking for venture capital investment and get that venture capital investment to grow. So I work with them all through their life cycle, from the time they're formed up until their exit. I left big firm life about a year ago to found my own firm, Seed GC, and the GC is for general counsel. So I focus a little more on San Diego-based companies now, and earlier stage companies, and some companies that maybe aren't on that traditional venture capital track, some that are different size and shapes of businesses. But I love working with founders, and I love getting involved from the earliest stages and really helping them grow and get things going.
Perfect. Awesome.
See if you guys can hear me.
I know. I'm just going to hang on to that. I think we got the time.
Good turn to talk. So my name is Samantha Urban. I'm a true technologist. I bought my first computer when I was 10 years old, so I always knew I would do something special in software. Computer science is my background for college, and then I wound up being a U.S. patent officer. So I did graphical user interfaces for patent examining, and then I didn't want to be in the lawyer realm or legal stuff. So while I was reading all the patents about Apple and everything, I was like, man, I need to get back to my computer science roots. So then I went back to being a software engineer. So when the UPS delivers your mail, or UPS delivers your packages, or you go to Target and they scan your UPC label, I've worked on that code. So I eventually did that for about a year and a half, and I'm not an introvert, so I got out of the whole software engineering thing and said, what do I do with this degree? And I was very fortunate and lucky. I was on the East Coast at the time to go to this event that Facebook was throwing on the East Coast. And I wound up meeting some people and found out that I would be really good as a project manager. So I was the first project manager of the 3rd largest social network. I won't make you guys think. Back in 2007, it was MySpace was number 1, Facebook was number 2, and my yearbook was number 3. So I was their first product manager, and we did really well. So we grew that company 3 times its size, and eventually sold for $100 million, so I did pretty good. While I was there, I traveled to Brazil. So my question for you guys, have anybody been to Brazil?
I'm from there.
Okay, you're from there. I don't want to talk to you right now. Of these few hands, how many people speak Portuguese? I know you do. Okay.
I am Portuguese, but I don't speak it.
Well, there you go. So while I was at my yearbook, I decided to take a nice little vacation with my friend. And I'm a very picky eater. My friend is a vegetarian. Brazilians love meat. So unfortunately, when we went to all these different restaurants, the server would hand us a paper menu. It would all be in Portuguese. No server, no manager, nobody spoke English. So in 6 days, we walked out of 11 restaurants. Flew back to the United States, starving. And with my whole background in software and everything, we went to a restaurant. We had the same experience. Server comes over, takes our order, walks back to his point of sale system, puts everything in. And then it dawned on me, why can't the server bring me a mobile version of their point of sale system? So if I'm in Brazil, France, Tokyo, I press English, order everything exactly as I want because I'm picky. And then the kicker, it goes back to the kitchen in their native language. Ta-da! Urban Translations was born. And because of all my software background, I didn't just do it for the restaurant industry. I made a platform so it was usable for hotels and pretty much anything, airports, airlines, that type of thing. Just give us your content and we display it and people can order from it. So that's kind of how the whole thing happened. And then eventually I moved away from my yearbook once that was sold, and then went to another company, that one was sold, and then at that point I started my company 100% full time. So that's me.
Wow, great story. I just got over a sore throat, so I hope you guys can hear me.
Do you want to use the mic? For fun?
Sure.
But, you know, we've got this fancy system here.
Sorry, I feel
Yeah, that's
like
okay. Just bring it
voice
pretty
challenged here. Like my colleague here, I have a technical background, and actually that's how I got into being an entrepreneur. I guess the best way of describing me is a serial entrepreneur. Fund Athena is my 5th startup, but I started my career as a software engineer, developing applications at NCR Corporation for ATM systems, actually just in Rancho Bernardo. And I not only learned how to code there, I got a husband there. and not only, and then what happens often with corporate America, after we got married, I was in software, he was in hardware. I wanted to get a promotion, and I was told, well, gosh, we really need to make certain your promotion is in line with your husband's career in case you have to be relocated. And I was like, wow, I didn't think that was what I signed up for. So I left and thought that I would get a chance to lead some other areas, and realized after 10 years that I could build the great software. I was, at the time I left corporate America, I was, VP level, and found that I wasn't going to end up being the CEO of the company. So I went to graduate school and started my first startup, but able to get some assets out of it to do another startup called Real Qualified. And while I was doing that business, one of my investors said, you know, you have, through that transition of these prior 4 companies, raised over $30 million in venture capital, built 3 nationwide companies, and you've raised it from venture, institutional venture, angel, debt, strategic. So you should use your experience to help others be able to raise capital. And there's this new regulation called Reg A Plus that was announced this year. So Reg A Plus allows you to do like a simplified IPO. And so that will allow you to raise up to $50 million in capital. So what we built Fund Athena to help people who were like what I was doing, that you have a big, huge market, double-digit billion-dollar market, but when you get to a certain point, you know, you're competing with a lot of guys and the decision to decide whether or not they're going to invest another 10 to 15 to 20 million dollars in your company there's not a precedent of women to do that. So our goal is to be able to provide a pathway for women to build businesses like Sarah Blakely, who ran Spanx, and those types of businesses, because we're capable, we have great ideas, we need the capital to do it. The other thing with Reg A Plus is there's a liquidity component too, because that's always been the thing, is there's so many issues, but I'll talk about that when you ask those questions. But you also have the ability to sell your shares without being public. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's what I'm doing with Fund Athena.
Awesome. Thank you.
Very nice.
Wow, I'm going to be boring compared to all these people. So I'm Dina Moskowitz, and currently I'm the CEO of SaaSmax. Can you hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you still hear me okay? Is it easier like this, or doesn't it?
Totally up to you.
Okay, so
And you gotta hold it close, otherwise don't even worry about it.
okay.
Yeah.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's see. I started my career in finance and investment banking, and ended up being a startup entrepreneur multiple times. And when I started, I came out from New York, and I was in one of these crazy 100-hour work week jobs where I was doing evaluation of investment opportunities and helping to create private placements and all sorts of employee buyouts, and really got a good understanding of how to apply finance in real life. And then I got involved in certain startups, and one with my ex-husband, which was a medical device company. So I helped him to grow that into a vertically integrated manufacturing facility with probably about 80 employees or so. And that led to a divorce, okay? That left me in a very precarious position. I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I didn't know which direction I should go, so I started my own consulting business, doing business plan consulting, because it was important to me to have a job where FaceTime was not required, but I could do the type of work I was capable of doing and be around entrepreneurship and help others to do what they needed to do. And so I did that for most of my career while my children were growing up over the last 15 years. Now they're late teenagers and they're both in college. And in their teens, so in around 2008, I went into my first SaaS company. And what stimulated this SaaS company, a business cloud software company, was that there were fires. And those fires were actually in Rancho Bernardo and caused a lot of people to be out of their home and grab all of their papers and bring them in their car. And so I noticed there was so many papers in a car that your valuables were not going with you to evacuate. And so I started a company called Critical Digital Data, which I took public. I exited, and then I just said, what am I going to do next from there? And what I recognized was there was a whole market opportunity for many other business cloud software providers that were launching, and it's proliferating in every vertical, in every horizontal, from retail and hospitality and point of sale applications to backup disaster recovery to marketing and sales applications. It was so big, and yet with all these applications coming to market, there was no way to help them to grow and cross the chasm, or cross the chasm to find to go from early adoption into finding a mature market and a broader spectrum of potential customers for them. And so that's what spurred my founding of SaaSmax. And I've been doing that for the past 4 years, and it's just been a startup, a really pure startup, and one thing leads to another, and now we're not only doing SaaS distribution, but we're developing partner intelligence tools. So it's going into business intelligence. So a lot of interesting stuff.
Awesome, perfect. I'm going to stay on you, Dina.
Oh, no.
So I'm going to ask just a few fun questions to get us loosened up and to get to know the panel a little bit better. So first question, I'm going to have everybody just kind of down the line answer. What did you do to earn your first dollar?
Yeah, I thought about that. I actually plucked petals off of roses and I crushed them into what I thought was perfume. And I set up a little shop on my block near a playground selling my perfume.
I have to, I guess, answer this from two perspectives. One, my first dollar working for someone is I was a #1 Girl Scout cookie salesperson. Anybody went through that sales training as well? But then the other first business is I actually started a small lending project within my own family. I used to lend my siblings money to go out and charge them interest or do their chores. So that was the other side.
Perfect, awesome. And Dina, I'm going to just have you hang on to the mic because I think our other panelists are
So
good at
we're the light
projecting.
voice people.
Yes, perfect. Samantha.
Awesome. When I was in first grade, so 6, 7 years old, I saw a trend that was happening where everybody liked those little rubber bracelets. So I went to the machines in the supermarket and I would buy them and I would sell them to people for double the price. And apparently I was getting caught because the principal called my parents and said that everyone was giving me all their lunch money and they thought it was a 5th grader, and here it is, this 6-year-old making all this money off of people's lunch.
Awesome. Elizabeth?
I think all of these stories are like the original friends and family rounds, right? Like you hit up your family first. Yeah, I think I made popsicle crafts and sold them to my aunts and uncles.
Okay, perfect.
I hadn't remembered this until somebody asked me just a while ago. So in my senior year in high school, and it goes into the story why I'm an angel investor myself, but wanted to go on a senior trip, and it was a certain amount of money. And my father was like, you can't go. He was very Italian, you cannot go anywhere. I went out 3 times a year, that's it. And that was my curfew or whatever that is. So he says, yeah, you can't go. I said, what about if I earn the money? Because he was an entrepreneur himself. Can I go? And it was like $1,000-something. And from Venezuela, you're like $1,000? Yeah, whatever. You know, you're not gonna raise $1,000. He goes, yeah, sure. You raise the money, you can go. I'm like, yes. So I baked cookies when he fell asleep at night on Sunday nights, and I sold them at school. I got, approval by the principal and all the teachers to sell because they knew that my dad was the way he is. And they're like, yeah, no problem, we'll buy all of them. You know, everybody was buying also like cakes and stuff like that. And I still have the original. I don't know if you guys, this is really old, but there's like these little like workbooks that were just lined, but they were like this. They were not like this. They were like this, and they were like open like this. You know. Anyways, I still. That was like composition books, but they're very flimsy Venezuelan type. But anyways, maybe they were in the United States. I don't know. But I still have them, and I have like how much the flour costs and stuff like that. So really, really neat. I had not thought about that for a while, so that was kind of cool. So yeah,
Perfect. So staying on you, we'll go back down the line. What's your #1 most unique talent? It can be anything. And if you're not ready and someone else wants to jump in.
Go the other way.
Come on. Okay, so here's a lesson in we need to brag, ladies. This is come on.
I'll take it.
All right, Samantha, good job.
I'll take it. So everyone always says this is a unique talent of mine. For me, I just feel like it's natural because sometimes you don't realize your own talents. But I have this amazing talent of attracting all the right people at the right times. So especially with urban translations, I was a software engineer, but I didn't want to be the person who developed my product. I'm the CEO now. So I needed to attract the right engineer. So I did. This one day, I just happened to listen to this one friend of mine, and he was complaining about his job, and I was like, the universe is telling me I better tell him about what I'm doing. So I did, and he said, wow, Samantha, that's the most amazing thing. You know what? I would like to work for you for 1 to 2 years without pay, and I want to create that product.
How do you find it?
That's my unique talent.
Take her out, Samantha.
And he did. He quit, and he worked with me for 2 years, built our product, and that's how we have urban translations.
Okay, so the lesson is find someone who's really disgruntled in their job. Perfect, Dina.
Okay, I can tell you two things. One is this really
2, I love it. I love it. Bring it, girl.
One is a business one, which is that I somehow am able to brush off a lot of rejection.
Amen.
And you need that when you're an entrepreneur. So you don't think about it as if you're going through it, but when I look at how many rejections or how many you can'ts or don'ts or are you crazies, I realize that I must be very good at putting blinders on and doing that. So that's one thing. And the other is I don't know if this is a real talent, but my kids always said, so I can play my lips. So it's like,
for my family, so we have big Sunday dinners, so I'm a very good cook according to my son.
What time is dinner?
I know, right? 6 o'clock. All right, Elizabeth, come on. Come on.
I'll go then.
Okay, Sylvia, and then Elizabeth.
I'm trying to think of like a personal one and
Pass it down to the end. Take it down on that end.
So I think professionally, I think a lot of people, I call myself a business strategist, but we were even talking today with Sylvia, we call it Tocaya, which is somebody has the same name as you. But really looking at the scientific part of things, like the scientific method. Why do I like business strategy so much? Because it is about iteration, it's about testing, it's about all that stuff. So I like to kind of connect very distal things. My mom even said when I was little, it's like you could see black and white and see both of them really, really easily. I don't know why it was, but I think that's what is like very distal things, technology and business, or like art. My dad was into graphic design, and he was always like, say what colors are wrong on this on the sheet of paper that he printed, and I could tell which ones they were, but then you could ask me a soft skill too and I got it right away. Like it was just really interesting how, I guess that's my talent, is just kind of looking black and white, very different things and seeing the pros and cons of everything. And then on the opposite side, I think that, with my kids and my home and all that, it's always warm. And whenever people come in and do our labs with us, or, I meet with an angel investor to talk to them about angel, I talked to an entrepreneur about angel investing. They just, we're always sometimes crying. But I'm like, what do I do wrong? And it's just the warmth. And I think that's come from Latina, being humble, listening a lot. So as an angel investor myself, I listen. I'm like, okay, what are your needs? I can maybe help you, but maybe I can connect you with somebody else. And having that warmth and even business, I think it's very hard as a woman. I was in science and everybody's like, why do you want to do this and this? And I'm like, but I'm warm, I'm Latina, I'm a woman and I like this and I want to be warm in this stark science thing that I'm living. I don't really care what you think, I'm gonna be warm. And that's something like even in business, it's like you need to be like this. And I am all about like this. Whoever knows me, I'm like action, let's get it done, but it's like in a very supportive, warm environment and I refuse to like be different from that. So I think that that's one of my strong points.
Brilliant.
Is that
Perfect.
good?
I love
Okay.
it. Awesome.
Now-
I love it.
I just do not have any circus tricks. But if I have a business talent, I think it's probably working with grouchy people. I can break down almost anyone, which in some ways isn't good because then my colleagues tend to send grouchy people to me. It comes in handy working with lawyers on the other side of the table.
That's awesome. That's a good talent. I like that. Perfect. Brilliant. All right, Dina, I'm going to come back to you. Number one biggest all-time in under 20 seconds, biggest career win. Just biggest overall.
Well, okay. On a personal level, it's more that in the last 3 years, I went from being an unknown in my industry sector to now being a keynote speaker in my industry sector and having our brand be well adopted and known in the areas where it needed to be. So.
That's huge. That's awesome.
I would say I have to break them into two. At a personal level, it's hard. Looking back, that I raised the 30 million, and I'm not that old. Secondly, I would say personally, it's my son. He is the sun and moon. My little, well, he's not little. He's bigger than me. He'll be 22 this Friday. That's my biggest accomplishment.
That's fantastic. Awesome. Hang on. This for us. Keep it down.
I guess I've had a great career, but I mean, the most important thing is what's going on right now. So a couple weeks ago, we got a signed contract with Treasure Island in Vegas. But the really big win on this is we sent out the press release. A couple weeks went by, we got some good things going on about it, but then we just got contacted last week by the Discovery Channel, and they want to feature urban translations on the Discovery Channel. That's cool. So,
Elizabeth.
I would say for me, I've got 3 young kids, so being able to keep up with a career through that has been an accomplishment.
Big time. That's fantastic.
So for me, I think it's 2. Sorry, I have to put two.
Yeah.
I know this is kind of like cheesy, but it was winning Athena's award this year.
That was amazing.
I'm sorry, but that was amazing. And I think that I went in not thinking I was going to win it at all because I was against like amazing women. Like we have amazing women here in San Diego, don't we? I mean, just amazing women. My mom was with me just by chance. And it was just like one of those things that was just like a pinnacle. So thank you. It was amazing, and I'm not trying to like butter up Athena or anything. But it really was awesome. And I think the second thing is kids. My biggest accomplishment is my kids. They're very different. I have a special needs child. I have an ADHD boy, and like a girl that wants to do everything. So just keeping an incredibly awesome Google Calendar that's color-coded and perfect and all that, I think that's like a win. Being here right now is a win. They're not texting me. Yes. So
Perfect. Awesome. I'm going to jump to the question, and we'll start with you, Sylvia, and go around down the line. What is your personal vision for women by 2020? Anything you want to paint, and we'll keep it, moving down the line if we can. And if we don't want to start with Sylvia, if somebody else wants to jump in. Yep, Kim.
So I would have to say the other third thing is the founding of Fund Athena.
Yes.
So my vision is that when a woman wants to grow her big $1 billion business, that she's not going to be asked, well, gosh, if you if I invest $2, $5, $10 million in you, are you going to make a choice between your child or meeting with a partner? Are you going to, if you're not married, or if you are married, before you do this, what does your husband say about you doing this business? Or is it really that your husband is doing that business? So to be able to have a path for, and not, we fund women-led as well as gender-diverse teams, but that there's a path to do that, and people don't see this as an exception, but that it's a rule, and so people have the ability to build more bigger businesses because you can, and there's somebody who understands how you do what you do and appreciates it.
Awesome.
So maybe that's 100 women a year, or not women, but 100 companies, because it doesn't have to just be a woman CEO. It could be a woman on a management team, or a group of guys who say, you know what, there's something good about having women lead and own our businesses. So
I think dovetailing into that, so part of my job as a corporate attorney is to sit in on board meetings for companies. So for dozens and dozens and dozens of startups, I would sit in on all their board meetings. So at the early stage, that's just the founders. When investors join, then investors start sitting around the board table and the boardroom gets a little more crowded. And out of all of those companies, there were only 2 companies I worked with that had other women in the boardroom. One was a CEO, one was a venture capital investor. And I'm talking even companies that sold women's clothes. No women in the room. But I'd really, whether it's as founders or investors, Kim, like you said, just having a female at the table, I think is really important and good for companies. And I think companies are starting to realize that more, but I'd love to see more of that.
Perfect. Who wants to go next?
Okay. Yeah, I think a big topic that's been around recently is all the different things about, exact pay, same pay for females and males. So I think by 2020, my gosh, I hope we get to that point that we can do that, because I know when we're doing our hiring schedule and everything, if I have project manager, I don't have female project manager, male project manager at a different price. I have project manager, and that's how all the organizations should be. It shouldn't just be this difference of, the male or not. So I think that would be the big thing for 2020 or before.
Perfect.
Yes, what I can add to all of these great ideas is that I think many times, at least in business, in finance and technology, I see a lot of women have to adjust who they are in order to fit in. And I would like to see women just be themselves and be able to flourish by being themselves. And what that also involves is women being compassionate and understanding of each other as well, and to be guides and mentors to those women. And for men to also recognize that just because a woman is going to maybe dress a little more colorfully or be more emotional, that it doesn't mean that they're not contributing in the ways that they could, and that there's just more of a being able to see women being themselves and being comfortable in their own shoes.
So I'm a data's girl, a data-driven girl, and numbers. So we are at having 15% of angel investors are female. Is that a good number?
Hey, we're at 4, so that's way better.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
It's-
VC is more in that 4
VC
range,
is
right?
4.
Yeah.
Are those good numbers?
No.
No. I want that dial to be turned like way up, okay? Because there is, the reason why women don't get the funding that they need is that there is pattern recognition. So pattern recognition is that an angel investor on one side of the table sees Mark Zuckerberg, or they see themselves 20 years younger. Okay, and it's not like it's bad or good or indifferent, it's just, that's just how it is. If we're seeing a woman on the other side, we see her as more like us. So if we have more equality, I'm not saying that I want like it to be like 80% of angel investors to be women. That'd be nice. That'd be nice. But I mean, it's not bad. It's just like an equal faring on for both sides of the table. So I always say both sides of the table need to increase. Also, 15% of startups are funded, right? 50% of women, 50% of startups who are women get funded as well. It's the same sort of thing, 15-15. It's the same
Imagine that.
Right.
How ironic is that?
Why?
Let's put those numbers
It's
together.
the same thing. It's the same people looking across the way. But there's been great data around, even Shark Tank. And the guy, Mr. Wonderful, says that he wasn't even putting a gender lens on it, and it is a gender lens. He's basically saying the people who are being the most having the highest ROIs are the women CEOs. So just kind of having that idea that we do want to increase those numbers, turn the dial, increase both sides of the table, increase the number of VCs out there so that there is more equality. When a female comes into a boardroom, when they come into a deal room, they have equal footing with another male. That's
Perfect.
numbers.
So we're gonna stay on this topic.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay with you, and then whoever wants to answer down the line. How do we fix it? How do we get to 50-50?
50-50. So small steps. I'm about, about incremental change and incremental changes in the marketplace for startups. It's the same sort of thing for angel investing, is that the small amounts of changes that we can do to increase the number of angel investors is education. Is saying a female angel is more risk averse than a male. It's out there. Okay, so own that and say, okay, I am risk averse. I need to get educated. I need to join something. I need to join either an angel group, because a lot of people de-risk themselves by joining an angel group instead of doing it themselves. Or I want to get educated. There's a lot of things that are sprouting up. Pipeline fellowships out of New York City,
Which we're launching.
we're launching in the
here.
fall, by the way. They are coming out and they are doing a whole boot camp for female angel investors. And other people doing Golden Seeds is another really amazing organization across the nation that actually does pipeline fellowship boot camps for those angel investors that want to become women who want to become angel investors. So that's it. Education, small incremental changes, creating angel funds like Hera funds so that we all feel like that we're connected, that we can fund more easily and
Perfect.
easier.
Brilliant. Okay. Anybody else want to tackle that? Yes.
Well, I will tell you what we're doing and the numbers of where they are today. So women-led companies that seek funding from a VC is less than 3%, like 2.9. Women, we're a management team where a woman is one of 3 or one of 5, it's 17.9%. 80% of funding from institutional investors is to exclusively all guys. Most venture firms, there's like 1,200 of them, are guys. It's just as Sylvia mentioned. So that path, it's not going to change that frequently. And the reality is that you look at a lot of the traditional methods, be it if you choose to get equity, some form of financing, or debt. Women, as of the last 30 years, you could say, since Title IX, everybody knows what Title IX is. That's what allowed us to play the same sports that guys did, except for football. That since that time, and there's been more educational opportunities open to women, then that's accelerated the path that women have pursued business. But we still have a long, long ways to go. And the other side of it is on the venture side. Most venture firms fund 5 to 10 deals a year, even though they see thousands. So they fund less than 1% of what's seen. So there's alternative sources, and that's what's thought about with the crowdfunding, be it Kickstarter, GoFundMe, Dealstrip, which is a debt side. Those are providing alternative opportunities for people to fund their businesses. And it allows you to go directly to the market. If you can show that you're delivering value to the marketplace, they're going to fund you. They're not going to look at who you are. They're looking at what value that you have. And that's the side that Fund Athena is playing on, but not necessarily at that reward-based or seed-based or even series-based level. For those companies that have a significant opportunity, that they should have the opportunity to look at what value they're delivering to the marketplace and introduce them to the marketplace, as opposed to looking at who they are, who's delivering it to the marketplace. So that's what we're doing to help improve that balance. Because the other side of it is you can continue through the process of thinking, okay, I did this for 10 years. if when I get to the VP level, I'm going to make X, Y, Z. But one, there's less opportunity. And so the other side of it is you could make just what the guys make if you are the person who's making the decision. And so you need capital to get there on the other side.
Great, awesome. Any other comments by our panelists on how do we change this ratio, so to speak? How do we fix it?
I think there's a natural evolution or change that's happening right now on the younger generation side. Like I know when I was at a trade show about a year ago, and I was telling a guy who was probably in his mid-60s what I do, and he said, "Wow, that sounds really interesting. Is your husband the CEO?" And when I talk to people who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, there's never that question of where, that I'm in this position. And so I think that there is a natural acceptance. I think that for women, we need to be bolder. We need to be at our core. There's an interesting study, or certain people do, these assessments where they show that a female inner voice is a lot different innately than a male inner voice. A male inner voice has confidence. It's about power and wealth. And I actually wrote this down here, virility and status, right? And for women, in our natural voice, what we're hearing is not so much confidence, but we're thinking about our self-worth. Are we good enough? Is my idea okay enough? Am I going to be accepted? Do I have financial stability? We just think a little bit differently. And in order to do the kinds of things we want to do that require us to go out and get funded, we have to be bolder, and we have to recognize that, your ideas, your concepts, your innovations, and your inventions probably have a lot of merit, and it's worth it for you to explore them to the next level. So,
love it. Awesome.
One other thing that I would like to add, our focus is not just women-led; it's gender diversity, because there is they say women are from Mars, women are from Venus, and men are from Mars. There is that the different viewpoints, and there's been study after study that when you combine them in a management environment, preferably that if there's a group of 10, that at least 3 of them are women, that the overall brain trust and how decisions made are quite different. And so to that end, women need to build partnerships with men. Women need to build partnerships with men with experience, because if since Title IX, there's been this growth of women pursuing business opportunities, guys have been doing it for a long time. And the reality is there's 5 generations of people generally in the workplace, and the guys that have a lot of the wealth and a lot of the experience are the guys that are in the baby boomer and the silent generation. And so building those relationships with them is important, because they have a lot of experience to help you get to where you're going. That's what the guys do. They go through and say, you know what, I want to get to where you are. How did you do that? Or if you were going to do what I'm doing, what would you do differently? We have to be okay with building those relationships with those guys that are 60, 70 years old, because they have a lot that they can help with.
Awesome. Fantastic. So I have 2 more questions for the panel, then I have a few questions that came from the Facebook post, and then we're going to open it up to questions with you. So this question is for Dina and Samantha first, and then Elizabeth, I'm going to ask you sort of an add-on question, your perspective of this. So Dina, we'll start with you. Have you raised money? And just tell us just a quick narrative on how that process went for you.
Okay, yeah, I have raised money. I've also helped a lot of companies raise money through the business plan consulting that I've done. What's most interesting about the route that I've taken in the last 2 ventures that I've been in is that I've taken my companies public and done it not by a typical IPO at the end of the journey, but I did it at the beginning of the journey, where I'm able to register an S1, and that means I put all of my current shareholders into, report them into the SEC, and then it helped me to basically hedge their downside by creating what was called a public shell. And so it's a little different, but I'm happy to speak with anyone who has a unique business idea that can potentially be publicly traded and share with you how I've done that and the pitfalls to avoid and how to do those things. But I've done some crowdfunding as well, and each one seems to be a different journey. So, but I think I've raised overall around probably in the 3 to 4 million range.
Awesome, sounds good. Samantha?
Great. So mine is a yes and no. So I did some family friend stuff. I also did the crowdfunding thing with like a Kickstarter type thing. Was good, you know, but basically, especially once I moved my company to California, Southern California, I was just talking about this. I decided what's going on in the space here, and then I decided to enroll in Connect. And I got into their program for Springboard, and it was a great incubator thing. We ended up getting fast tracked through the program, and the whole thing is about getting investors, right? So the funny thing about their competition at the end, it's called the Capital Competition. Urban Translations won, but there's no money that comes with it. So that's one of the things that you just is unfortunate, you know. But I'd like to say that, you know, it also prepped you to have like a bulletproof investor presentation. So that was the great thing that came out of it, along with a lot of investors. And also I kind of treated it as, hey, we don't really need money right now. It's beneficial, it's gonna make us grow faster, but this is more of like my practice. It's like when you're in high school and you just wanna do a bunch of job interviews. You don't really need the money, but it helps you so that once you do get into it, then you're gonna be on it, right? So now that we've lined up a lot of wins in the company, actually today we sent out a contract to the #1 casino resort on the East Coast. I'm actually going to be going after investment. So July is about our time that we're gonna start seeking some investors, but otherwise with all the great stuff I've had in my career, I've been able to fund it up to this point without having the need. And that's what I'd always, you know, recommend to people is be in the position going after investors. Do it when you have that upper hand, where you get to choose. I want an investor who's morally and ethically aligned with how I view my company and everything. So that way, when I get investors and I start, you know, doing due diligence on them while they're doing due diligence on me, I get to choose who I want because I don't need it. It's going to help us. But that's what I would recommend: is be at that position where you have the upper hand, especially being a female amongst the world of all the men investors.
Great, and traction too. You
And
just
traction.
mentioned a couple of different
Exactly.
things. Traction is huge.
Line up everything. There's actually the 5 M's. So there's market, there's money, there's model, management, and momentum. Those are the key 5 M's when you really want to get into everything with investors and just make sure that you have everything solid and set. Those 5 M's are huge.
Perfect, awesome. So Elizabeth, my question for you, since you see a lot of deals and you're on the legal side of things, what is your advice for somebody who is seeking? We've got some great advice here, the 5 M's and really what to look for, but from your perspective on the legal side, what should somebody be thinking about as they think about raising money for their business?
I think the 5 M's are a great point, and also, you know, having that confidence in your business plan is really important. If you don't believe in it, you know, if you come off at doubting yourself, it's hard to get people to write a check to back you. So I think really understanding your business, understanding what the levers are, understanding how much money you need, and what you're going to use it for. Sometimes at Pitch Fest, I'll see people say, I'm raising $100 grand, you know, but you want to figure out an amount of money that's going to get you to some milestone. So then when you need more money, you say, well, I got this much. Here's what I did with it. It got me to here, and now I'm looking for this much, and it's going to take me to here. So I think, you know, sometimes there's a lot to do in a startup company. So sometimes you focus on the parts you like and the parts that you're good at. But having an understanding of your whole business and a confidence about that when you're talking to investors is really important.
Awesome, perfect. Okay, so my final question before we get to the Facebook questions is going to be for Sylvia and Kim. So the question is, how do you spot a winner? But before we dive into that question, Sylvia, I want you to talk just briefly about your philosophy in Hera Labs. So we heard you say it's very action-oriented, but why this 16 hours? And I know you're working on a 3-month, you know, longer term, but how do men and women differ potentially in sort of an accelerator program as you've built?
Yeah, so great question. A couple of things that I've seen. So we have the Idea Potential Lab, which is 16 hours from idea to pitch. And pitch does not mean like a really like robust pitch that you can go after for investment. It's a pitch to a room full of supporters or partners or something like that say, okay, this idea makes sense. What do you guys think? Like I've done all the due diligence that I can, did the market research. I've talked to some target customers. You know, what do you guys think? I think it's a good idea. What do you guys think? So 16 hours, and then we have a 3-month program that we're starting in the fall. That is it's a typical accelerator program. Now, what's different than for female founders? Okay, a lot of it we've kind of gone through it. It's confidence. A lot of it is confidence. The first thing that we do in the IP lab is we have a little pie chart that says, what are your assets? Okay, because you need to know your own assets of what you bring to the table, and the assets you don't think about. It's like, how do you story tell your life? You don't think about that. You kind of say, oh yeah, I kind of do this, or my assets are, you know, here, there, but really concretely, what are your assets professionally, technically, what can you bring to the table? Because that is what's going to be able to help you create that management team of saying, hey, I don't have that asset, or I don't want to have that asset, like you said, and I need to get that, and I need to get that talent in on my starting team. So really looking at what are the assets that I bring together, and then looking at, you know, let's say the market validation, saying, okay, what is the size of the market, going top down, bottoms up. I mean, really poking holes through everything. And women don't like to have their ideas poked through, the challenge, and that's another thing. I think that those are the two things. It's one, like asset and really understanding what you bring to the table and how awesome you really are as a female startup, and then the other part is really finding out, you know, what is that poking holes. Like, really don't think it's the greatest thing to slice bread. I mean, you should, but really be able to have that constructive criticism brought your way and say, oh, I don't know that. And that's okay not to know that. You're always beating yourself up. Oh my gosh, I didn't get enough education, and I don't know that. No, it's like, okay, fine, I don't know that. Let me figure that out. Let me talk to a lawyer. Let me talk to somebody else. Oh, I know this next door neighbor that really does this really well. Talk to them. Build that up. Build that into something that's going to be, you know, a great startup.
Perfect. Awesome. So how do you spot a winner? So
Okay, so how do I spot?
besides 5'9",
Yeah.
blonde hair.
So a big thing in angel investment is it the jockey or the horse? And people probably have already heard that. I bank more on the jockey. I say a business is going to pivot 1,000 zillion times before it goes public or it becomes successful. So if that entrepreneur is not a good jockey, that she can pivot whenever she can, that she knows when to pivot and how to pivot because she has a great team in back of her and she's actually listening to them, she's coachable, that's the winner that I see. So that's kind of what.
Perfect. Awesome. I love it. Kim, how do you spot a winner?
So I'm going to take this from a standpoint of the area, the sandbox that I play in. You're looking for millions of dollars for funding. And so there's 5 areas of validation. The first is your idea about validation. And many people kind of get that depending on what you want to do. If you're saying you're going to build a big business meaning, you know, $50 million annual revenues and up, I mean, you really should be at, you know, $250,000, $500 million, $250 million, $500 million. That's where you need to be if you're looking at taking somebody's money other than an angel. So many people decide, I'm going to start a business, and they think, okay, this is a problem I have, and so because I have that problem, you know, everybody else does. Mm-hmm. If you can't find 100 other people who say that whatever you're going to do is solving their problem, then it's just your own personal project. It is not a venture financeable project. And there's so many people who say, well, gosh, I have an idea to do. Great. If you can't find 100 people who say whatever you're doing to solve that problem that they would want to do, then it's an idea. And it's a hypothesis. It is not just my idea is doing this. It's more of a problem statement. This is the problem, and I view that if I do these things, it will fix this. So having that hypothesis with organizing it, and that's the first piece. And unfortunately, a lot of people fall down in that area because there's so many, it's my idea, but you've not gotten out of the room. And don't go through and say, oh gosh, if I share this with somebody, they're going to take my idea from me. That's not, there's so many ways of doing things. So that idea, validation. So, and someone who said, yes, I've tested it on these people, and this is what, of the 100 people I asked at minimum, then they said blah, blah, blah. So that's the first thing. And if you haven't done that, then, you're wanting to go through and get friends and family's money. The second is customer validation. It's not enough to go through and say, you ask them, would you be a customer? Would you be willing to sign something that said, if I did this, you would want it? So that's the second validation point. You have the ability to get at least 100 customers. The third is revenue validation. And it can be revenue or it could be something similar to that. But you have to be able to go through and say that you're going to get 100 people to pay you something for this. And it may be one of those things that's it's a tier thing that they're just going to pay you for testing it. But then once you've proven that it solves this problem, they're going to pay you something that you can actually get a real salary if you were going and working at a Fortune 500 company. So it's hypothesis, customer, revenue. The third is model. You've got to be able to show that you can take that business and be able to serve hundreds of thousands or millions of people on a predictable basis. You've got to go through and show that every month you can grow your business, 100,000, 150, 200,000 in revenue, on and on and on and on. If you haven't done those things, you have a project, you don't have a business. The last is market validation. You go through and say, I'm solving XYZ for this particular market, and you can define, my market is solving, there's X number of these people, there's 10 million people that this has a problem, and they spend X amount of dollars. Okay, so that's your market. The other piece of it is, of that, I'm gonna own at least 20, 30, 40% of that market. Once you've gone through those stages, then you're at the point where you can substantially raise millions of dollars. The problem is you may not even get to the point of having someone break it down to you like that because they're still trying to figure out whether or not you have a real hypothesis. So if someone has gone through those stages, you have something. You have at least revenue validation where you've got over 100 customers and they're predictably paying you the same thing month over month, then you have something. Revenue validation is you can show that, model validation is that your business has grown. So when you've gotten those things, then you've got something.
Perfect, awesome. So we're gonna go to our Facebook questions. The first one's by Nicole McDonald. Some of you may know her, founder of the Sash Bag, which is a product-based business. It's an accessory. Her question is, how can non-tech companies frame their investment needs and opportunities in a way that is attractive to investors when everybody's focused on technology? Anybody want to tackle that?
There's, it's not always about tech.
Really?
It's not. I mean, and I'm a tech diva. If you look at the companies that are getting funded on Shark Tank, they're not tech companies. You look at the companies that are funded on Kickstarter, they're not tech companies. They are solving a significant problem, and there's millions of problems out there. You've just got to pick those problems that it's a problem for millions of people. And you also look at segments of the market. I've met several of you that are in the area of home-assisted healthcare and all of those type of things. There's lots of people who can build substantial businesses around that.
So I want
How do
to,
you get investment?
yeah, how do you actually get investment? Because the main question that comes up is scale, right?
So it's the numbers.
Yeah.
You got
How do you scale?
going back to those 5 areas. You've got to pick a market that is 10, 20, 30, 50 billion in dollars and hundreds of millions of customers. I talked to someone who's in this assistant healthcare side. It's a multi-billion-dollar marketplace, and you're going through and showing that you have the ability to that you're targeting serving hundreds of millions of people at some point at scale or whatever. But then you go down to that same kind of 5 things of validation. You prove that you got 100 of them. It could be 100 people you're selling specialized pacifiers to them, and you can equate it to X amount of people are born in this period of time. Those exponential numbers. That is what gets you funded. The problem is that people go through and present their company like it's a solopreneur, and you're not going to get those funds. The most that you'll be able to get, maybe a angel who bets, like Sylvia said, in you, or you'll get debt financing once you get to profitability.
Great, Dina.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in the same way that VCs will and investors will do their due diligence on you and examine all sorts of opportunities, it's your job, if you really want to go after the funding, is to figure out which investors are investing in your space. So don't spend your time going after a venture capital fund that only invests in technology. Look for the ones that say they invest in non-tech or in consumer durables or whatever it may be. And there are lots of ways to search for those online. You can leverage AngelList and see what opportunities are getting funded. Look at who's funding your competitors or who's funding other products that are in the same space as you, and find out who those investors are as well and knock on their doors. But try to limit it down and figure out who your target investor would be rather than try to go after a broader set of investors, because a lot of times what people don't realize is that a venture capital fund has a certain target investment criteria that they promise their investors that they will only invest in companies that have 3 million in revenue or more, or will only invest in technology or only invest in biotech. So they can't even take the time to look at your deal if they can't even, if their charter says they can't invest in those deals. So do your research on them and so that you can approach the right ones with strength.
Awesome. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Do your due diligence always. It's just like if you interview for some job, you gotta, interview them too, that type of thing. But what I was gonna say, if these people are in the beginning stages and stuff like that, there are incubators and accelerators that don't just focus on technology. They can utilize them because then you're gonna get all kinds of advisors. I mentioned Connect, and I have such great advisors because of going through that program. And it's not just for tech; it can be for anything. I saw companies going through it that have physical products that they're selling to the general public. And so you just have to utilize the different resources that are in your area, and there's plenty of them, whether it's San Diego or a different city.
And in San Diego, there are accelerators just for everybody to be on the same playing field. Connect is awesome. Evo Nexus is great. Of course, I'm going tech, but just kind of giving everybody in the room the law of the land. If you're at SDSU, there's a Zahn Center, which is great. UCSD has Von Liebig Center. They have Founders Institute here, which is all global, all the United States. And there's a lot of platforms that are not just, let's say, an accelerator and stuff like that you can connect with different angels and VCs. So did I cover everybody? Make sure that
Startup leadership.
yeah, startup leadership, SLP, what's SLP? Anybody else? Also, like startup weekends and stuff like that is a great
Startup week.
Startup week. We're here. But I've been involved with Startup Weekend a couple of times, so that's a great way to start. And a lot of angels and possibly VCs are in that audience. So again, like I always say, you never know who you will meet. So always be on the guard and be ready for your ask.
Perfect.
Coming up,
Awesome.
one word
Sorry,
for each panelist, your word, your mantra. One word. What is the one word of the year, so to speak? As you focus. Dina, I'm starting with you. One word.
One word.
One word.
Go, go, go.
Fun.
Fun. Okay, I like that. Samantha?
Billions.
Billions. All right.
For the moms in the crowd, my word is outsource.
And I say grit.
Grit. I love it. Awesome. Round of applause.